This video is brought to you by my New York City Apartment Hunting Chronicles.
You have probably heard how difficult and competitive New York City apartment hunting process is, and I'm here to tell you that all the rumors are sadly true. So I went through the apartment hunting process twice in 2 years. I definitely learned a lot from the experiences, so I wanted to do a video including all my tips, things that I could have done in hopes to help you with your moving process. Joining us for the first time, my name is Tisha. I'm originally from Kathmandu, Nepal, and I moved to the US when I was 18 for my undergrad. Prior to moving to New York City, I was living in Jersey for years. I wasn't really planning to move to the city since I work in New Jersey, but I was so unhappy with my life. I was so lost, and I really felt that I needed a fresh start. I sold all my furniture and I moved to New York City at 34. Typically, people move to New York City in their early 20s, mid 20s, or late 20s, and then move out in their 30s. I ended up doing the opposite thing, and I felt that if I don't move right now, it will never happen. Currently, I don't have that many responsibilities beside my dog Chape, and if I don't do it, I felt like when I look back in life, I'll regret it big time. So one of the main things to be aware about when you're apartment hunting in New York City is the season. So there's off-peak season and then peak season. So depending on the season, it impacts broker commission, rent, as well as inventory. So October to April is considered as off-peak season, and May to September is considered as peak season. So during off-peak season, less people are moving to New York City. The rent as well as broker commission is lower compared to the peak season. However, inventory is less as well. During peak season, a lot of people are moving to New York City, so the competition is higher. At the same time, inventory is more as well. Because of the competition, the rent is higher, broker commission is higher. So to search for apartments, I use both Street Easy as well as Zillow. If you're planning to just use one, then I'll recommend to use Street Easy, because for the same listing, there are times where Street Easy will not just have the photos, there'll be videos as well. Whereas on Zillow, it's just photos for some reason. And having the video is very useful, and that way you can see it up front if you would like the apartment or not. Photos can be deceiving. Well, videos can be deceiving as well if you take videos in a wide angle lens, but you can sense that, you know. And beside that, based on your criteria, you can place filters, as in like you're looking for a studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, what's your price range. Also, when you're searching for your apartment, I would recommend to search your apartment on map view instead of list view, especially if you know what area you're looking for. In the map view, you can see all the different apartments that are available in that area. I find it easier than searching for apartment in a list view. Also on Street Easy, you can put a filter on no broker fee apartment as well, but majority of apartments do have broker fees. I would suggest when you're budgeting for moving to New York City or moving within New York City to budget for a broker fee. So on the bottom of the listing on both Street Easy as well as Zillow, there's a history of the apartment as well that goes back a few years, and this information is very, very helpful because you can see when the apartment was listed on the market and if there has been any price adjustment, and also based on when the apartment was removed from the market and when it was listed, you can gauge how long the previous tenant has lived in the apartment as well and how much the rent was. I know there are times where you have to break your lease because of personal reasons, but if you see a trend where the previous tenants left less than a year or within a year, maybe something is up with the apartment. If the apartment has been on the market for quite some time, that means either there is an issue with the apartment, or when the apartment was listed the first time around, it was overpriced. Beside the history of the apartment that the listing is for, you can see the history for the other apartments in the building as well, and this gives you an idea on how does the turnover looks like for tenants for that apartment building.
If there's an apartment that you really like and you know there is going to be high competition, besides reaching out to them on Zillow or Street Easy, I would recommend to reach out to them directly as well. A lot of times there is broker's number on the listing, so sometimes I would text them or email them directly, and if there is no number available, then I used to go to the broker's website to get their number and text them.
One of the main criteria that determines if you're eligible for an apartment or not is your income and your credit score. So landlords are looking for tenants to make 40 times of the monthly rent in annual income and a credit score of 675 or above. If you meet the criteria for income as well as credit score, then you're good. If not, then there's an option to get a guarantor as well. However, the guarantor needs to make 80 times of the monthly rent in annual income. And for some reason, if you don't have a guarantor, I heard somewhere that there is a website where you can pay money to get a guarantor. So in terms of documents, they ask for 2 recent pay stubs, bank statement, as well as W-2, which is your tax return. But there was one place where they asked for 3. So just to be on a safer side, just have 3 set of documents ready. Beside that, they need a copy of your photo ID.
Even though they'll be checking my credit score as part of my application review, I still used to include my credit score report as part of my application package.
In some cases, they'll ask for employment letter as well as landlord reference letter. At times when they ask for an employment letter, they'll request to include your annual income in the employment letter as well. And if you just got your job or you're newly hired and you don't have your pay stubs with you, then an offer letter would suffice as well. Also, in some cases, they ask for a landlord reference letter. Keeping aside the reference letter from the landlord, I would suggest to have rest of the documents ready. So in cases of ESA, as part of the application package, you do need to include the ESA documentation along with photos of your pet.
If you're self-employed or retired, these are the requested documents.
So if you have pets, I highly recommend to check if you're eligible for an ESA or not, which is emotional support animal. And if you are, then I would highly recommend to get your documentation beforehand itself. So what I noticed was when you put a filter on for pets allowed, it does remove quite a lot of apartments from the listing. So no pets allowed policy, or let's say if you have a dog and they only allow cats, then they can't discriminate. They still have to review your application. So initially when I was looking for apartments, I had the filter on and it removes so many apartments, that also good apartments from the listing. But let's say if an apartment has a lot of competition and if the owner is hell-bent of not having a tenant that has pets, your chances are low. But at the same time, there are owners that are flexible as well, as long as you have proper documentation. So the apartment that I ended up with do not allow pets, but since I had proper ESA documentation, plus the owner herself, she has pets as well, she was fine with me having a dog. Regardless, it's off-peak season or peak season, you have to be ready with your paperwork. So one of my main tips is to prepare all the documents that you need. Majority of the application, the list of documents you need is the same. What I did was I created a folder dedicated for my application paperwork. So for application submission, it's through an email, or there were times where it's through a broker's portal as well. So when you have it prepped up in a folder, it's just a matter of uploading it when you're completing the application via the portal. Or if it's through an email, then you already have a draft email ready. You just have to address it to the broker and then update it to the broker's email address, and that's it. And sometimes even though you submitted your application first, you may not get selected. It's not just based on the paperwork, it's based on landlord or broker's preference as well. But the best you can do is to be prepared, and everything else is up to destiny. So in order to secure your apartment, these are the different costs. So first is the application fee. Typically, it's from $20 to $25. There was one apartment for which I paid $43 and it was a rent stabilized apartment. So once your application is approved, you have to pay your security deposit, which is typically a 1-month rent. And then you have to pay broker fee. So when I was apartment hunting, the broker fee was between 10 to 15%. I've heard during the peak season, sometimes it's 15 to 20% as well. And beside that, you have to pay your first month rent as well. I've heard instances where the owner asks for the last month rent as well. In my case, it never happened. Also, while you're viewing the apartment, check with the broker if there are any other fees beside the standard ones. For example, if there are any move-in or move-out fees or pet fee. There was one brokerage who asked for a $500 good faith deposit. They would return it if I decide not to move forward with the apartment, or if, let's say, my application was not approved. But this good faith deposit, which was refundable, had to be submitted as part of the application itself. So when I checked the brokerage on Yelp, the reviews were very mixed. So the reviews on Yelp mentioned that the good faith deposit was refunded, but it did take a few weeks. So the broker that I was working with, I got super lucky. He didn't wait for the brokerage to refund the money. He ended up refunding from his personal account. So beside the total amount that is needed to secure the apartment, I recommend to keep a buffer around that. In that way, you can cover any other miscellaneous fees, or for some reason a brokerage asks for a good faith deposit. So I'll quickly go over the amount that I had to pay to secure the apartment. So the application fee was $25. My security deposit was 1 month rent, and my monthly rent is $2,650. Beside that, I had to pay my first month rent, so another $2,650. Since I moved end of the month, I had to pay for those days as well, so it was $548. That's the prorated amount. And for broker commission, when I viewed the apartment, it was 12%, but at the time of application submission, I was able to bring it down to 10%. For broker fee alone was $3,180. And also there was move-in and move-out fee for $250. I didn't know about this up until I got the lease, and that amount my broker ended up observing it. So there are two websites that I highly recommend to check out. Ideally before the viewing itself. If you didn't get a chance, then I highly recommend to do that before you submit your application. So the first website is OpenIgloo, and then the other one is the housing department website. Eventually, I started to do this after viewing so many apartments that were not in good condition. So as soon as the broker responded back to my inquiry and before I confirmed the appointment, I used to look up the apartment both in OpenIgloo as well as housing department.
You just have to plug in the building address on the housing department website, and there you can see all the complaints and violations. On OpenIgloo, you can see violations, complaints, along with tenants' reviews as well. So another recommendation is to have a list of must-haves and nice-to-have, and be open enough to move it around.
So when you're viewing the apartment, don't just check the appliances or the closet. Check what's underneath the sink area. Where do you throw the trash? Is it outside of the building, or is it on the first floor? Because if it's on the first floor, during summertime, the whole apartment building will smell, and there are more chances of rodents as well. Another thing is to listen to your intuition or listen to the feeling. So when you view the apartment, if it feels off, then something is probably off. So I would say to honor the feeling, honor the intuition, and skip that apartment.
While viewing the apartment, if you notice anything that needs to be fixed, I would recommend to list it down and provide it to the broker at the time of lease signing. After moving in, if you have issues with the apartment or with the building management, I would recommend to reach out to 311. You can call 311 directly. They will send someone to inspect the issue.
I recommend start looking for apartments on Street Easy as well as Zillow a couple of months prior to your move-in date. You won't find apartments that aligns with your move-in date, but this will give you an idea how the market looks like and also what's the rent range. If you can, I would suggest to come here for a weekend or for a couple of days, explore the different neighborhoods that you're planning to move, because visiting and living here is completely different. You can start seriously looking at apartments a few weeks prior to your move-in date. So let's say your move-in date is 3/1. When you look it up in January or December, it'll be very few. Majority of the apartments will start becoming available beginning of February. It actually picks up mid of February, and then it picks up a lot end of February. Another option is to look into New York City Housing Lottery, which is part of the Housing Connect program. So they have affordable housing options for low income and moderate income applicants. Sorry, I got distracted with dogs here. So they have low income units, middle income units, and then 20/80. That means the building will provide 20% of the units as part of the housing lottery, and then 80% will be offered based on the regular market rate. As I wasn't aware about this, I didn't create my account or submitted my application for the lottery. I am planning to look into it though. If you're interested, I will leave the link in the description box below where you can create your account or submit your application. This is something to have on the side. It's not something you can rely on it since it's based on lottery. I've heard that it takes months to get a response. So I had a list of must-haves, which I ended up drilling down further, mainly because of my budget. So I had a few items as my non-negotiable. One is the space. Since I'm in my 30s, plus I work from home, I only go to the office once a week. I really wanted a good amount of living space in my apartment. Not just a good amount of living space, proper distinction of space as well. Like for example, my home office, I didn't want my home office to be in my bedroom, and also windows preferably facing south. So my previous apartment was on the first floor. I only got daylight daylight in the bedroom, and majority of the day I'm in my living room since my office is there. Beside that, the apartment should allow pets, and also noise level is another one since I work from home and also I create vlogs. I didn't want my apartment to be right next to a very busy street. And the other non-negotiable item was storage space. So another one that is actually top in my priority list is safety. I really wanted my apartment to be very close to the train station, and the neighborhood needs to be in a central location. When I say central location, there are restaurants, cafe, parks. But an important reminder here, regardless of how safe your neighborhood is, you do have to be careful and vigilant about your surroundings. So a couple of weeks ago, when I was walking home 2 streets down from where I live, someone in a bike stopped next to me and he groped from behind, and I consider my neighborhood to be very safe. So regardless of how safe you consider your neighborhood to be vigilant, be mindful about your surroundings. So for my first apartment hunting, I toured 13 apartments and I landed with this apartment. Rent was $23.50 with no broker fee. It was a very good size 1-bedroom apartment. It was on the first floor and the windows were facing the street. But when I did apartment hunting the second time around, I ended up touring 50 apartments in total. And it's all because I was so traumatized from my first New York City apartment experience. First, when I moved in, the apartment was extremely dirty. Apparently, the apartment was vacant for a few months. And once I got done cleaning, then came the roaches. Big ones, small ones, tiny ones. It took me a while to get the situation in control, but that ended. Then I had mold issue. I was getting charged for gas where nothing in the apartment utilizes gas. Beside the ones I'm highlighting, I had other issues with the management as well. Midway itself, I knew I would be moving out. But for the second time around, I ended up doing an intensive apartment hunt before finalizing my second apartment, mainly because I didn't want to go through the experience again. When I started off with apartment hunting, the max that I was willing to reach was $2,400 or $2,500. But based on what I saw on the market, I had to move my maximum budget to $2,600. At one point, I was considering $2,700 as well. So my budget for a 1-bedroom apartment is very, very, very low. So the price, I had to move because there was some creepy guy who came to the place I was sitting. So per rent hub, the average rent for a studio apartment for October 2024 is $3,495. For 1 bedroom, the average is $4,300.
So the first 3 apartments that I had applied for, which will go in a bit, those apartments were applied at the time when I was trying to break my lease. So I was trying to break my lease 2 months prior to the actual lease end date. This was the first apartment that I had applied to. The rent was $24.95. So this was one of the spacious studio apartment that I saw and had good storage space as well. And the French door separates the living space from the kitchen. There was one closet in the bedroom and then the other one in the foyer. All the appliances in the kitchen seemed to be fairly new. The layout wasn't really the ideal layout that I was looking for, since I would have to keep my office in the kitchen, which is at the back. So the broker fee was 13% of the annual rent. And at the time of application submission, I negotiated and brought it down to 10%. So my application, everything looked good. However, someone else submitted the application with a higher broker fee. So the broker did call to see if I'm willing to increase the broker fee. I told the broker just to move forward with 10% because that's what we had agreed upon. And at the time, I wasn't sure if they were lying to me to see if I could pay a higher broker fee. At the end, I'm really happy that this apartment did not work out. Things always works out how it's supposed to be. So because of this apartment, I found about ESA. Once I found about ESA, it increased the number of apartment listings. So the actual broker that I was working with, he was super nice and helpful. I ended up seeing 4 more apartments with him. Later on, I actually applied 2 additional apartments through him. So whenever you go see these apartments, if you end up meeting with the broker who seems to be very helpful, I would recommend to keep in contact with them. Second apartment I applied to was a pseudo 1-bedroom apartment with a very narrow layout. Kitchen and living room layout along with bathroom was very congested. Bedroom size was decent. The windows were facing south and there was 1 closet in the bedroom. Kitchen appliances were fairly new. Couple who was living there, they were breaking their lease because both of them work from home, and what they mentioned was that it's very congested since both of them are working in a very small space. So the initial asking price for this apartment was $2,700. There was no broker fee because the current tenant were paying the broker fee. 2,700 was definitely out of my price point. Plus, the apartment did not feel homey. I tried to negotiate with the broker to see if they could bring down the rent price to 2,500 and also if they're open to 2-year lease. The reason why I wanted to sign the 2-year lease is because that particular rent price would be locked for 2 years. This apartment was not rent stabilized. Finally, they agreed to 2,600 as the rent price, so I got a $100 deduction, and also they agreed to 2-year lease. Ultimately, I decided not to proceed with this apartment. So during this time is when the move out date mishap happened with the building management, because of which I was able to stay in my old apartment for an additional month and complete my entire lease term. And I thought I will take my time and look for more apartments instead of settling and potentially not being happy for 2 years. So around the same time frame, I had applied to this rent stabilized apartment. So this apartment is on a 5th floor. The kitchen and bathroom are on the older side. The main things that got me super excited were those massive windows in the living room as well as bedroom, which were south facing, and then the massive ceilings as well. Closet space wise, it was pretty small. However, the apartment is big enough to have additional wardrobe. So when I first saw the apartment, I really thought that I'll get this apartment for sure. And you know when you get that intuition that something is for you, that's how I felt, and I really thought maybe the other apartments did not work out. It's because of this apartment. I was that delusional. Even though I really liked the apartment, I wasn't a big fan of the apartment being on top of a restaurant. I really wanted to avoid an apartment building with a restaurant or grocery. Since this is a rent stabilized apartment, they only had one viewing. That's it. Also, once you get there was a sign up list where you put down your name as well as email address, and I was second last in that list. However, for the application, as soon as I received the application, I submitted right away, and at the end they ended up moving forward with another applicant. So when this was happening with this apartment, I was still working with the broker for the second apartment, the narrow apartment, and negotiating the rent as well as the broker fee. Right now when I'm talking, it's linear, but all of this is happening in parallel. So rest of the apartments from here, I was applying during the time frame when my move out date was my lease end date. This was another rent stabilized apartment, very good sized studio. So there is an arch that separates the living room and then the bedroom area. So there was only one closet. It was very deep though. The kitchen was on the older side and the bathroom had a very weird bathtub. Also under the sink area in the kitchen, there was paper towel and tape around the pipes. When I told the broker, she did remove the tape as well as paper towel, but there weren't any holes. So I'm not really sure why they had tapes and the paper towel there. Beside that, the floors were very tilted. It was literally like this. It was very tilted. At the end, they went with another applicant because they submitted the application before I did. And this rent stabilized apartment was not even on the market. When it's off market, there's less competition. So I really thought my chances would be high. But again, someone beat me to it. My goal is to find a rent stabilized apartment in Manhattan. In that way, I don't have to worry about lease renewal every year and how much they will increase the rent. Because for rent stabilized, they can only increase it by a certain percentage, and the percentage is very low compared to non-rent stabilized apartments. This was another rent stabilized apartment and it was in Upper West Side. This one had a broker fee of 15% of the annual rent. Again, for this apartment, there was only one open house. I got my appointment early thinking I'll be the first one, but that wasn't the case. There were 2 people in front of me and I was the third one. And slowly the line started to form. Since the apartment was occupied at the time of the viewing, only one person could see the apartment with the broker and you just have to wait outside for your turn. So this apartment has somewhat of a weird layout. Half of the cabinets for the kitchen is in the kitchen area and then half of it is in the living room. The windows are facing south. It is small windows, but at least it's facing south. Both the living room as well as the bedroom were decent size. So the current tenant had installed these closets and the broker wasn't sure if the tenant would be leaving the closet behind or not. So both the apartment as well as apartment building was on the older side. There was one person who actually came with her laptop and she submitted her application right there and then. So by the time I submitted my application, I was second in line. So I received an email from the broker that they decided to move forward with the first applicant who submitted their application, and I was second and my application would be treated as a backup. However, after a few days, that applicant decided to drop off. I received another email from the broker. I only saw the email after 30 minutes. I did respond, but again, I was late. Someone else beat me to it. I fell in love with this apartment mainly because of the tenant's decoration. I think she did a phenomenal job with the decoration as well as storage. So in addition to tenant's interior design, I'm a big sucker for decorated fireplace as well as French door. The apartment was really nice, but in terms of layout, it wasn't the most ideal one since the living room is on the back, so it wouldn't get much daylight. There were 2 closets in the apartment. I would say decent New York City closet size. I submitted my application as soon as I got home. It did get approved as well. However, the stars were not aligned. The tenant was not able to find a new apartment on time and she had to extend her lease. I actually waited till the end to see if the tenant was able to find a new place. After a few months, I did look up the apartment on Street Easy. Based on the history, the tenant did move out. However, she moved out, I believe, after a month or 2 months. Another rent-stabilized 1-bedroom apartment with a line outside of the apartment building as well as the apartment. There were 2 brokers in the lobby and then 1 broker inside the apartment. The 2 brokers outside was just to manage crowd. Not only is rent-stabilized, there is washer dryer in the basement as well. They were only letting 2 or 3 people to view the apartment and each of us only got 5 minutes. That's it. With this apartment, it did not matter what time you showed up. What mattered was how much commission as well as security deposit that you're putting down. Once I submitted my application, the broker had called me back since the landlord had decided to push out the move-in date by a few days. At the same time, what he told me was that they have received numerous applications and people are putting down higher security deposit as well as broker fee. Since it's rent stabilized, when they're submitting the application, they can't really increase the rent price. At the end, I decided to increase the broker fee from 15% to 18%. I know 15 to 18 doesn't sound a lot, but when I do 15% of the annual rent or 18% of the annual rent, it's a big difference. Whenever I'm submitting my application, if I need to decrease the broker fee, I am negotiating with them at the time of application submission, but I didn't think about if I need to bid a higher price. I should do it when I'm submitting my application. I don't know why that didn't click. Even after submitting with 18% broker fee, at the end I did not get the apartment. They ended up going with someone else. The next apartment is a small 1-bedroom apartment with washer dryer as well as elevator in the building. I wasn't really a big fan of this apartment. The only reason why I decided to apply was because of the price. So all the windows in the apartment was facing the back. So it did get daylight, but it wasn't that bright. There was 1 closet in the living room and there was another closet in the bedroom. There was 1 person who came to view the apartment. She was fully prepared. She had a measuring tape with her. She was knocking around the walls to see if the walls are thin. She was opening up the tap in the bathroom, in the kitchen to see the water pressure. This apartment requires ESA documentation. When I spoke with the broker, I kind of got a feeling that I wouldn't get this apartment. What he said was to submit my ESA documentation, but he did preface that this apartment building does not allow pets. Broker never responded me with the decision. So when I was checking in Street Easy, I noticed that the apartment was listed as in contract, and that's how I found out that they went ahead with another tenant. So around this time, I had applied to numerous apartments. Nothing had been finalized yet because I was still waiting to hear back from the brokers for my application. Since I'm talking about 1 apartment at a time, it seems like it's linear, but all of this was happening in barrels. Instead of putting all my eggs in 1 basket or multiple baskets that's still TBD, I continued viewing other apartments as well. The next apartment I saw was a studio apartment which had this flex wall that deviated up the living space. There were a set of closets in the foyer. The windows in the apartment were pretty big and was facing a busy street. However, from noise standpoint, it wasn't too prominent. The apartment building also had an elevator as well as washer dryer in the basement. This is one of the apartments where I had to pay $500 good faith deposit, which was refundable. Broker fee was 12%. I did not negotiate at all for this apartment as there was washer dryer, elevator. At the end, the brokerage ended up moving forward with another applicant. So the same broker ended up sending me another 1-bedroom apartment with washer dryer in the basement. This one was a decent sized 1-bedroom apartment with the living room facing south. There was a closet in the living room. It was on the 2nd floor. It had washer dryer in the basement. Since this was a transfer, I did not have to pay an additional application fee. So the asking rent price for this apartment was $2,750 and the broker fee was 1 month rent. At the time of the application transfer, I was able to negotiate and bring down the rent to $2,650. And as soon as my application got transferred, it got approved right away. So when I went back with my sister to take measurements, both my sister and we agreed that the neighborhood did not seem safe, and because of safety concerns, we ended up not moving forward with the apartment. So the next apartment that I applied to was a backup option. So this one was a very small 1-bedroom apartment with a decorative fireplace. The windows in the living room were facing south. There was only one storage space that also above the bathroom. Beside that, there were no closets at all. Kitchen was decent size with a good amount of cabinets. The main issue here was that the apartment did not have any closets. The apartment building was right next to the school. I did inquire with the broker if there are any noise concerns because of that, because one of my friends who lives in Brooklyn, her apartment is right next to a school, and she had mentioned that it gets very noisy, especially during summertime. So when I inquired with the broker, he said he has never heard any complaints from anyone, so he didn't think it would be an issue. Ultimately, I did not move forward with the apartment, mainly because of non-existent closets and limited storage space. So the next apartment is the one that I ended up moving forward with. So the monthly rent is $2,650. The asking broker fee was 12%. At the time of application submission, I tried to negotiate the broker fee to 9%, but at the end, we landed on 10%. Also, this apartment only allowed ESA. This apartment is a true 1-bedroom apartment with a lot of storage space. There's a small walk-in closet in the foyer. There's another closet in the bedroom. So there's proper distinction of space. All the windows in the apartment faces south, so it's completely sun drenched. The windows in the living room is very close to the windows that I have on my vision board. Beside that, the kitchen. I love how the wood wraps around the kitchen. It is so unique and distinct. Bathroom is a very good sized bathroom as well. Acceptance for this apartment wasn't based on who submitted the application first. It was based on broker's feedback as well as landlord preference. So when I say preference, the landlord was not looking for an applicant with a guarantor, or they were not looking for an applicant who is still in college. When I came back to view the apartment with my sister to take measurements and to make the final decision, I met the tenant who was living here and had asked her if she had faced any issues with the apartment, if there are any rodents or pests. She mentioned that she never had any issues. The only thing that she pointed out was that in the bathroom, I just have to be careful how much I turn on the hot water because the water gets hot very quickly. Under the sink area in the kitchen was very damaged because of the leakage. The surrounding around the pipes were caulked up. At the end, I'm very happy with the decision. Beside the apartments that I have mentioned here, I had viewed other apartments as well. If you're interested, I will link the moving series in my description box below. I really hope this video was helpful and gave you a realistic view on how New York City apartment hunting goes. If you have been through the apartment hunting process in New York, or after watching other apartment hunting process, if there are any other tips, please leave it in the comments down below. Apartment hunting and moving is very stressful, and by us sharing our realistic experience, if it helps someone with their process, I think it'll be very helpful. And with this, I will end the video here. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe and support the channel. Whenever you interact with the video, either it could be like, comment, subscribe, or share. It signals YouTube algorithm to push out the video to a larger audience. If you have an Instagram, my Instagram is Tisha, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.